Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of Anxiety Week, exploring songs that are tense or feel tight, claustrophobic, or anxious with a band called Ghinzu. We're looking at the title track from the Blow album, which came out. Of course, Spotify doesn't want to load for me right now. It came out sometime in the past. Y'all can give me some context on that. Sometime in the past. Let's dive into this and see what Ghinzu is bringing to the table with Blow. This is definitely a tense start. This is interesting so far. Okay, we got a chord now at least. I was gonna say it's very atmospheric, almost soundtracky in a lot of ways. Like that balance. A lot of the higher end stuff, and then it cuts out for this piano and bass guitar to kind of fill in the bottom and build back up. Brings this weight back in.
Did
many thin instruments right here. Lots of space because of that. Also, harmonically, though, there's a bit of tension. Not a strong element of dissonance, just a need for release that we're not really getting. Tension again. That one is a bit dissonant. The noise over here. I mean, the guitar is also being very noisy center stage too, but it's not a single focus of noise. It's a conglomeration of chaos. And it just stops? Okay. There's also something just slightly eerie about some of these quieter vocal bits. Bringing in the higher pitch vocals with a new ultra low pitch vocal. Yeah, that was a nice ending. That, I think, worked really well. I was kind of iffy about it at places. I was like, okay, where is this going? Kind of meandering in places. And just generally, I felt a flow through it. I don't think it was a bunch of disparate parts. It just was taking its time with its pacing. Totally worth it at the end, though. Absolutely loved how they brought back so many different ideas to create a new kind of tension there at the end. Throughout the song, we had parts that felt a little unsettling, I think, particularly the light, clean vocals. Something about their delivery felt eerie, a little off-putting at times. It's usually paired with lighter, more sparse instrumentation too, so that also kind of like feeds into that feeling. But there's also a lot of interesting instrument sounds in here, a lot of texture based playing, whether it is a synthesizer, just kind of creating a drone or a warbling of a bunch of notes together, or a guitar being played, above the nut and creating this loud chirping stuff. Or I'm sure there was some sounds being played with the guitar that took advantage of the overdrive, just kind of creating these loud abrasive sounds there too. There's a lot of ways that they achieved a sort of textural tension on here, kind of moving away from the more traditional sounds of these instruments and finding ways to use them unorthodoxically. Is that a word? Using them in an unorthodox way to create chirping, chunking sounds, all sorts of noisy ideas just on a texture side. There was that point, I guess about 5 minutes, 6 minutes into the song, too, where we found tension in the harmonic side of things, playing around with note intervals that are very destructive. They clash with each other. There's a lot of dissonance in these moments. And so we've kind of created an atmosphere that's tense. We've created sounds that are tense. And now we're creating chords that are tense. And of course, there's that super layered part in the penultimate section, give or take. I guess it's the third to last section, actually. Just so many sounds. I pointed out there's that big guitar noisiness in the center, and there's a guitar off to the left that was doing some noise, and a synth off to the right. And it's just a cacophony of sounds. And so this is a bit of a type of layering, a weight kind of tension where the song feels like it's closing in around you as the listener. And at the end of the song, we bring all of this together. There are a ton of layers in that final section of the song. There's some dissonance thrown in there too. There's some wild sounds in there. It's a little bit of everything, but I think more importantly, what I think really ties it together is that it's not just a little bit of everything. I guess we would call it as far as a collection of intentions of how are we going to go about creating these stressful environments, but also about pulling in specific ideas, specific sounds, specific melodies, specific harmonies into this from earlier in the track. We're literally bringing these parts of the song here, not just evoking the style of those moments, but really using those parts of the composition alongside not only the new section that's being created by all these, but also the new parts that are being played here at the end as well. It really brings everything together, not just compositionally, but also thematically. It puts a massive period at the end of this song and says, this is it. This is how the song ends. And it's going to reference everything we've done in this track. I really enjoy that. It makes the song feel very whole, very complete in a way that I was not sure it was going to back, about halfway into the song. And like I said, a lot of that comes down to the structure of it, where the song does consistently create a type of tension or eeriness or unsettling element to it. It is not a song that ever feels happy or joyful or anything like that. It's neutral at best and negative at worst. But each of these sections also feels kind of disparate too, connected thematically, but not really compositionally. The ideas of the first section that's a bit quieter with the softer vocals and the less layers doesn't really match that super noisy part. It doesn't really match the melodic element when the bass starts playing a moving line and the guitar gives us some riff on top of that. It doesn't match any of the louder, more bombastic, but less noisy sections, where we have some more straightforward composition going on, less textural, but very different from the other places where we've explored more melodic styles of riffage and melody. They're all similar, but they kind of feel like a bunch of ways of approaching the same idea. It's like giving 4 or 5 different people the same topic, and yeah, the papers they write are going to be similar, but they're also going to be quite different. They might approach it from a different angle or something like that. And that's kind of how I felt about this song. It's consistently changing its perspective and its intention while still retaining that core theme. It really isn't there until the end when I see how everything clicks together. There are certainly sections of the song that I think work better for me than others. And the noisy section is just really not my cup of tea, but I'm glad that it was a bit on the shorter side. It got in, did its thing, and left. It still lasted long enough to resonate and feel that atmosphere, but it was one of the shorter sections. And I'm happy that the more melodic and traditional writing prevailed on this as far as time, just from a subjective perspective on that. But I also appreciate the experimentation on here. I think it's interesting to start a song out with almost soundtrack music. I've almost completely forgot about this. I focused on like the 6 minutes of traditional rock sounds and completely forgot about the atmospheric opening. So that was a sense of peace or resolution that shifted into varying levels of tension. That's interesting. Definitely felt too. I enjoyed that opening. Kind of wish we had returned to it. I think it's the only thing that doesn't get sucked up into that final moment where it brings elements back from everything except that calm that is purposefully withheld. Okay. Like I was saying though, the think about that for a moment. I enjoy the experimentation on this. We start off in a very different vibe. It's not even just that they created a calmer section of the song, they used a completely different set of instrumentation for it too. That willingness to completely change not just the writing of the song, but also the textures through your timbres and instrumentation too. It's a willingness to kind of seek out what is necessary for the song rather than constricting yourself to the tools you have presently. And this is something I've kind of talked about in the past too, pertaining to metal. A lot of metal bands, they've got one or two guitars, a bassist, a drummer, and a vocalist. And that's usually all the tools they use. Sometimes, especially as we get a little bit more into the 2000s and later, you might have a synth in there, even if you don't have a synth player, maybe just for some chords or like a choir patch or something like that. But outside of that one technique, you really don't see a lot of extrapolation. And it's one of the things that I really latch onto when I hear it in a band. And one of the first ones that comes to my mind is Between the Buried and Me, bringing in, marimbas and xylophones and timpanis and all sorts of, auxiliary percussion bits, orchestral percussion elements, and seeing them live put their guitars down and go over to these instruments and play them. And like, I really latch onto that idea of trying to bring more instruments into the rock scene or the metal scene, and envisioning what the song demands rather than sticking to just what you have. Now, granted, limitation also makes creativity, right? That's definitely something that's been consistent throughout all time, whether it's art or inventions or anything like that. You get very creative when you restrict yourself down. But I feel like that's almost been overused in modern rock and metal, and I like this. A lot of this song has the same set of instruments in it, but this opening, they're like, no, we got to go outside. We got to go outside our safe zone here. We got to explore something else because we want it to be that different. And even exploring each of these sections, not all of them have synthesizers. When they do have synthesizers, they don't all have the same patch. There's something very specific and biting about that noisy synthesizer we have in that chaotic section versus the softer one they use for the melodic lines. And the atmospheric ones where they're just holding out these chords or drone even at times. they're all different. And it allows each of these sections to stand on its own, which also creates a little bit of this segmentedness. And what made me originally feel like they're all connected but separate. But I think in the end, it's the best way to go about doing this. They could have easily created something that felt very connected, very fluid, a consistent set of tools across the entire song. I think that would have worked too, but I don't know that the ending would have clicked as much as it did for me here because of all of the different ideas being plugged into this song and then bringing them back together at the end. And I think that absolutely works. And what I think is more impressive isn't just that these sections are very individual in their sound, their timbre, the feeling of them, but that by the end of the song, all of these instruments and timbres fit together in a way that feels cohesive and not like, a collage, a smashing together of a bunch of disparate sounding productions. And yeah, it just comes together in a way that I find really impressive. I'm going to look up some lyrics for this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Okay, so these lyrics kind of make me tense. There's some interesting uses of words and phrases in here that kind of teeter on that realm of what was that word I used earlier? Unease, I think, is the phrase I want. It like I can just barely make out an image of what it's trying to say, but it's also in that realm of these words don't fit together that way. And it's that, like, if it was any more bizarre, I could just write it off as oddity, strangeness, gong style lyrics. If it were any more straightforward, it'd be very on the nose, but it sits in that weird realm in the middle. Too metaphorical to easily read, not metaphorical enough to get, or to be interesting, to kind of border on that realm of profound, even though I don't get it. It says, "You are sent to take every time I fall, every piece of me. You are my faith, every sign you've made to tell me who I am. Sometimes you're the crowd, screaming too loud and telling me what I'm not." So there's an I, the narrator, and a you, it's the person they're talking to. And there's a strong relationship between the two of them. Every time this person falls, this other is there to take a piece of them. Now, I kind of interpret this as an interior thing, not necessarily a literal other, but another part of himself. Maybe it is the part of him that puts him down. Maybe it's the part that doesn't believe he can do this. But it's also this part, he says, "You are my faith, and you've made every sign that told me who I am." So they're a supporter at times, and they tear him down at other times. As he says, sometimes you scream too loud in the crowd and tell me what I'm not, which could be a positive thing. You know, it could be veering away from a bad choice. That's not who you are, man. Don't do that. But it also could be a way of putting him down. You know, don't follow those dreams. That's not who you are. You'll never be that big. That's just not in your genes, not in your blood. So that could be taken two different ways. Because it says in the crowd screaming too loud. Usually people in the crowd are going to be your supporters. But I suppose you could also have people rooting against you in the crowd too. So it's vague. Kind of could lean either way. And maybe the duality is the purpose. The two stanzas prior to this show how they are somebody in their corner and helps them out, but also someone who helps tear them down. It says, "Did you ever know there's a light inside your bones, the dream that you can't hide, and it teases you every night? And you don't understand, glaring at that light, sitting like a dog in your ordinary life." This is what makes me think that it's not an interior part, but someone exterior to the narrator. He says we all have a dream inside of us. You don't get it though. Maybe you don't have the dream. Maybe you don't understand what your dream is. It's there. He says, but like a dog, you're just glaring at it because your life is ordinary. You can't imagine anything else, but you have a drive in you. You just don't get it. He says, why are you paralyzed? This is where things get awkward. Feel you, feel me, one life, one shot, one love. Now you're a mannequin. Candy, cane gun, micro, brainwaves, remote, controlled white man. Now, I do think it's interesting. I don't know where I was going with that. I don't understand what most of this is, though. This is a part where it definitely feels like the words kind of flow together in a sonic kind of way, but I feel like there should be more rhyme or repeated syllables or something like that, and it doesn't really have that. Not sure what this is about at all. But now we flip the script, and where the first part of the song, first third of the song, was talking about what you do to me, now it's going to be my outlook on you. It says, would you tell me who you are right now? Don't tell me you don't know, because I know. Every piece of you that breaks, every time you lie, every time you say you're fine, I guess it's time for you to get used to you. Don't tell me you don't know, because I know. And I think that's a really interesting phrase. Because so much of the beginning was about this other person informing the narrator who they were and weren't. I feel like in most of those situations, the narrator felt slighted by the comments. And here, they're flipping that around. I don't know if they realize they're being hypocritical about it, but he says, don't tell me you don't know who you are, because I do. Implying that the way I see you is the way you must see you. And if you don't see that, I don't know how you couldn't, because I see it clear as day. And this is telling someone who they should or shouldn't be. I don't know if it's designed to flip it in a way that is antagonistic, to say, look, you did this to me, I'm going to do it to you now, or if there is a hypocritical element to it and the narrator doesn't realize what they're doing, but I do find that parallel to be interesting. Bringing back the idea of pieces breaking off. Something that he mentioned was what this other person did to them in the first stanza. But then the song ends. It says, please take me somewhere we can hide, somewhere we can dance the boogie. Please bring me something. Please give me something. And I think this puts a very interesting twist on it. It seems like an antagonistic relationship for the most part. There is that element where they feel like this other person is supportive of them at times, but for a lot of this, it feels like the two are against each other. Until the end here. He wants something out of this relationship, whatever that may be, whether it is antagonistic or platonic or familiar or even romantic. He wants to hide somewhere with this person, away from the world where they can just dance, whatever that might imply. It could be very surface level, could be metaphorical, but he says, please bring me something, please give me something. They're desperate here. They're even saying, please. I find that interesting. It puts a very wild spin on this relationship. It might be the only connection he has to anyone. As poor as it is for his mental health, and as much as he wishes to inflict that same emotional damage on this person, he still gets something out of this relationship, some sort of feeling, some sort of connection. He wants more of it, even though it's destructive. Very interesting. Especially to bring the song back on so many layers there at the end while this is being sung. Almost as if thinking back on all of these moments with this other person and realizing that, yeah, it's not great. They tear me down. Life kind of sucks when they're around, but it's better than feeling nothing. And kind of pairing that together, bringing it musically together, bringing all these sections into one, and then stating very clearly, please give me something. But that's just my interpretation. These are just my thoughts on Ghinzu's Blow. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said? Or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation of this song. Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though. We'll do the 10 a.m. release of the bonus track. It'll be the final song for whatever week from back in March. Finally done with that. We're caught up. This will be the last bonus video for a while, which is good. It's only one video, right? But dude, it messes with my scheduling so much. It'll be nice to get things a little bit back to normal on that. But yeah, that'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual, we'll have our album review. And this one's going to be interesting because there's just one song on it and it's 60 minutes. And I've been informed I should listen to it in one shot. So I'm going to be taking notes during that one. It'll be like the Frost review where we listen to large chunks and I write down my thoughts so that I can talk about it because it's a lot of music to, listen at once and then try to remember. So that'll be a little different than usual. I'm excited about it though. I don't even know what style of music it is. All I know is it's one really long song. Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll have the live stream as usual as well. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical. Cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.